Good evening, Councilman Swanson.
Hello, Mayor. How are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
Pretty well today.
Good. No trip to Rock Springs or anything today, huh?
That tomorrow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Better now than, mid-January when it's
True.
12 below, 40-mile-an-hour wind and it's snowing.
Yeah, true.
Are we the only ones on so far?
We've got Councilwoman Stoker and Councilwoman Ekstrom and yourself and Councilman Barker. So I think we can go ahead and get started. It's 6 o'clock. John, is it online now?
Yes, and Councilman Severing is here as well.
Well, where is he?
He's there. He's muted, but he's there.
Oh, I see him now. There he is with the deer horns behind him. Well, welcome, Council. Thank you again for joining us tonight, for your service to the citizens of North Ogden. I believe that tonight that Council Member Swanson is responsible for leading us in a thought and a pledge of allegiance or an invocation, whatever you have for us, Councilman Swanson.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been pondering this week the death of Justice Ginsburg and what her life represented and all that she accomplished. And I was thinking, as I thought about all that she accomplished and the ceilings that she broke through and the changes that she made for good in our country, I thought probably the greatest thing for me to take away from her life was the relationship she had with Justice Scalia. Virtually polar opposites when it came to what the law meant and what the Constitution stood for and where things ought to go, but the best of friends away from the court and away from those things. And I just couldn't help but think that if we had more of that in today's world, that we'd be in a much better place than we are now. Great example that she, that she set and that Justice Scalia set for all of us.
Thank you, Councilman Swanson. And the other thing is she was never afraid to stand up for what she believed.
Right.
For what she felt was right. And I think what you described and her actions as a Supreme Court justice for being consistent what she believed is a pretty good definition of integrity.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you.
If you'll all stand and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilman Swanson. We appreciate that. We'll get into our consent agenda tonight, which is a action to consider approving the minutes of the August 25th and September 1st, 2020 council meetings. Hopefully you've had a chance to review those. Are there any corrections to the minutes? If not, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes of August 21st, 25th, and September 1st. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Mayor.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilman Swanson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councilwoman Ekstrom. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah. Any opposed? Thank you. We'll now move into our active agenda and we'll seek comments from the public. John, do we have any public that have joined us tonight?
We do. Brenda Ashdown has her hand up.
Great. Once again, as a reminder, if you would just state your name, your full address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes. We'd appreciate it. So let's go to Brenda.
Brenda Ashdown, 193 East Pleasant View Drive. So that I don't come across as always complaining. John Call helped me find some things on the website, which I really appreciate. And they have planted the trees, and I don't know, when they spray the dirt green for the grass in the city shop across the street from me. And I just wanted to say I appreciate those things very much. Thank you.
Well, that's very kind of you, Brenda. Thank you so much. You know, in staff meeting this morning, we talked about the retention basin over there at the Public Works building being completed. So thank you for that comment. And we will continue to try to improve our website and Facebook page as we go forward. So thank you. John, anyone else?
Not this time.
Okay, we'll just give it a minute or two. All right, being no further public comments, we'll move to item 4 on our agenda. This item will be presented by Brandon Bell, who's our associate planner. And we'll enter into discussion to consider an ordinance amending the North Ogden Code, Chapter 11-10-16 regarding family swimming pool standards, and also Chapter 11-2-1, the definition of words and terms. So Brandon, if you're with us, let's move forward with that item.
You are muted, Brandon.
Oh, thank you. All right, I think I'm with you now. Thank you, Mayor. It was in, I think, late July that we were contacted by, at the time, a future resident of the city who had questions about the permitted locations of swimming pools on building lots in the single-family residential zones. And at that time, what we ended up informing the applicant was that at the current time, swimming pools are currently only allowed in rear yards of private lots. And so the applicant wanted to see if it'd be possible to consider adjusting where the pools are allowed to allow them on the side yards that are street facing of corner lots. So, and before I actually get into the rest of this, well, actually, let me read one statement first, and then I'll show you a diagram. John, while I'm reading this statement, if you could pull up I believe it's Exhibit B, which is Exhibit C, which is the diagram that I've included to address the locations of the side yard and the rear yard. So this is a legislative decision. This is a decision type. I'm going to read the decision type statement for these sorts of decisions. When the city is considering a legislative matter, the Planning Commission acts as a recommending body to the City Council. The city has wide discretion in taking legislative action. Examples of legislative actions are general plan, zoning map, and land use text amendments. Legislative actions require that the Planning Commission give a recommendation to the City Council. Typically, the criteria for making a decision related to a legislative matter require compatibility with the general plan and existing codes. So if you look at this diagram, in our definitions, we spell out what exactly constitutes different yards or portions of a lot in our zoning code. And so you'll notice here, this is specifically for a corner lot. And the definitions for a corner lot are actually somewhat unique compared to a typical, what we call interior lot, which just has, is in the middle of a block. And so you can see the corner rear yard. I'm going to go ahead and put an outline around that, is back here. This is where the pools are typically are allowed currently under our present ordinance. And then they're not allowed in the side yard or the corner side yard. One thing that's interesting, though, about our current definitions of corner side yard is that they currently they actually are defined such that they go all the way to the front of the lot on the side of the house that faces the street. So if this right here is a street and this is a street, then they actually go all the way to the front. And then they also go all the way to the rear property line. And because of that definition, I'll bring up a little bit about that later, but that affected a little bit how we wrote the ordinance. But I wanted to give you these definitions so that you understand that what I'm referring to when I refer to the corner rear yard, the corner side yard, and the front yard. And then again, I didn't cover this, but this is the front yard, just on the front of the home till it meets the street. But notice that it doesn't extend all the way to the side property line. It's intersected by the corner side yard. So I hope that'll provide a little bit of clarity as I talk about these different terms of rear yards and side yards. The proposed ordinance just makes basically a couple of simple changes. The primary purpose of the ordinance would be to, if it were adopted, to expand the location where family swimming pools are currently able to be located, from adding from their current permitted location of rear yards to also be permitted in the street facing side yards of the corner lot, so that the thinner yellow area that's on the side of the home, they would, if this ordinance were adopted, they'd be allowed in that area, not just the pink area. And then the second thing is that one of the detailed conditions is that they would, pools that are located in the side yard would need to be at least 10 feet from the side property line. That's an adjustment from a prior version at the recommendation of the Planning Commission, which the current ordinance reflects. And then the pools, the decking, meaning the concrete around it or other surface around it, and related machinery would be required to meet two standards related to the front yard or the home. The first is that they need to be behind the required setback of the zone and also no farther forward than the front corner of the main dwelling, which is closest to the pool. So I'm going to use a different color here on this diagram. Let's say for this particular example that this green line represents the required front setback, which is 30 feet in our single family zones. Most of the time, homes are built at that front setback. But the reason why we have two standards for the location relative to the front of the property in this ordinance is because there are times when the home is built further back than 30 feet. And so you could say have a home that's 50 feet back. What this ordinance accomplishes is that it needs to meet both requirements. It needs to both be behind the front setback, which we'll say is here, and also no farther forward than the home. So if this little green box was here, if a pool was built on this property and the home was built where the green box is, then the pool could come no farther forward than the front of that home, in addition to being behind the required front setback of this green line. So hopefully that's made it more clear, but we found it necessary to require both of those standards in case the home is not built at the front setback. The intent of that is that both the Planning Commission and the staff felt that we don't want pools to protrude in front of the home, and is effectively what most people would perceive, independent of planning definitions, to be in the front yard of a home, and sort of dominating the aesthetic impact on the neighbors in the street. And then finally, and that applies to the pools, the decking, and the related machinery. So if they wanted decking in front of that pool, they would need to have the concrete decking and then, or other material decking, and have that be no farther forward than the front of the home as well. It's actually the closest corner, front corner of the home is how it's written in the ordinance. And then the final point is that the definition that's being adjusted is a very minor change. We're actually simplifying it and removing some words just so that it's a little bit more simple and allows us to not be bound by some overly restrictive language about like it talked about the minimum distance, and we just felt it'd be best to remove a couple of words because the sidelines of homes tend to vary. Like you get a chimney or a bay window, and felt that that made it a little more complicated than it needed to be the way it was currently written. So we moved 4 or 5 words or so. So the Planning Commission recommended the ordinance amendment with 2 adjustments from a prior version. Both of those modifications are reflected in the current language of the proposed ordinance. So in other words, their feedback has been incorporated into the ordinance as it's shown in your packet tonight. And those 2 adjustments were to be that the swimming pools should be allowed to be 10 feet away from the side property line. And second, that the language of the ordinance clarify that it applies to single family residential zones. So on that second one, we just literally just added the term single family. And with regards to the 10 feet distance from a side property line, we had previously had it at 20 feet, which is the distance of an accessory building, and the Planning Commission felt comfortable with it being 10 feet from the property line. And that's for the swimming pool itself.
So Brandon, that's the pool itself, right? The deck can go right up against the property line?
Technically, it could. They'd still need to make sure that they're meeting the vegetative area requirement. Concrete detracts from the percentage of vegetative area, but there's not a distance requirement for the concrete itself as currently written.
Okay.
And then, so in regards to conformance with the general plan, the primary goal that staff believes applies to this situation is goal number 1 from our housing goals of that states establish and adhere to high quality building and design standards for all housing types, so that development enhances the community character. Staff has been generally in favor of this ordinance amendment. We've worked with the applicant and we've incorporated a few tweaks to it, but in principle, we've been fine with the adjustment. And then the Planning Commission put in a couple of tweaks as well, but it's the general idea of what the applicant was looking for, the Planning Commission was in support of and staff was okay with as well. And so a summary of considerations that you might want to think about as you deliberate this issue is: first, should the standards for swimming pools be amended to allow family swimming pools in the corner side yard of corner lots? What should those standards be? Are you satisfied with the standards that are currently in there regarding distance and other factors? And is this amendment consistent with the general plan? Again, one detail, the Planning Commission recommendation is that they unanimously recommended that the ordinance be approved with the changes that are reflected in this current version, which is in your packet tonight. I will say that I think one other piece of information that might be good to look at, John, if you could pull up the Exhibit A, which is actually the application, and we'll look at that for 1 minute. It'll give you a little bit better visual on where on property. I guess I've got to delete my, oh, they're gone. Okay. If you could go to the second, probably the 3rd or 4th page, I'm just looking for the diagram that shows, oh, there it is. So, and then if you wouldn't mind zooming in, that would be great. So this is maybe give you hopefully a little clearer picture of where they want to put a pool. I believe I've communicated this to the applicant, and they may be listening tonight. They were aware of the meeting and knew of the date and time. In this current version of the ordinance, just to be clear, the pool would not be allowed to be or the decking to be in front of the blue line. So it'd have to be behind the blue line. And so that would require an adjustment location to this, or making the pool a little bit smaller. We would have in effect a ordinance that's currently in the ordinance, which requires that they demonstrate that the pool be 35 feet from a home on an adjoining lot. So there's a lot back here. They need to show that it would be 35 feet from that lot back there. So I think that covers everything that I have to say. Hopefully I've made things clear and not opaque, but if you have any questions, I'm willing to take those at this time and see what I can do to help answer any questions.
Brandon, is that 35 feet from the property line or 35 feet from the dwelling?
It's 35 feet from the dwelling, actually, which is something that we have had applicants submit diagrams showing lines that say, show that it's 35 feet or greater. That's what the ordinance spells out, is that it needs to be 35 feet from a dwelling on an adjoining lot.
I have a question.
Okay, Councilwoman Ekstrom.
So Brandon, is there a house back there now, or is it still an open lot? Because I'm just worried if another resident wants to come and build their house and they're not 35 feet from the swimming pool, who gets dibs? You know what I mean? It's like if the house that wants to come back there is bigger and then they find out they're not 35 feet, does that cause a problem then?
So what we've done so far is if you have a building permit in prior to a neighbor, then we can only enforce the ordinance when a neighbor's in place, right? Has applied for a building permit. And so we've never run up against a case where, they apply simultaneously, but as long as your building permit is in prior to that, we've allowed them to build it, because we can't enforce it because we don't know where the home is going to be exactly. So.
Okay, so the next person that comes in is going to have to make sure his house is 35
Well, they don't
feet.
know, because what I'm basically saying is it's a first come, first serve, essentially. We can't enforce it on the neighbor because it doesn't apply to their home. They have a setback standard. And so, but they usually the pool is going to be built. And so they're going to know ahead of time, oh, I've got this pool here, and that's something I need to consider if I, want to build on this property or purchase this property.
Okay,
And
that clears that up. Okay.
I drove by last night and I can't remember, to Councilwoman Ekstrom's point, is the lot behind them vacant right now? I couldn't remember if there was a house there already or not.
I apologize. I can't remember either. I want to say that it's vacant, but I'm not certain. I need to.
And then there's the, just for practical purposes, they have to have what's set back from the property line on the rear yard? Is it 20 feet? I mean, how far can they put their dwelling or the pool close to their back property line?
With regards to the dwelling, mostly the dwellings have to be 20 feet. There's some exceptions for unwalled porches and similar features on a home that they can go 10 feet in our single family zones. But we don't technically have a setback that relates directly to the, well, no, that's not correct. They have to be 10 feet from a property line in the rear yard. And so the standard that we're applying to the side yard as currently written would be the same.
So my question was, if it was 20 feet on this lot and 20 feet from on the other lot, it wouldn't encroach upon that 30 feet. But if it's 10, then that means the other lot has to have a backyard of at least 25 feet from their dwelling, right? To meet the 35-foot.
Well, that goes back to what I'm saying is we can only enforce the ordinance at the time that the application comes in. So if a pool's been approved, we don't go to the adjoining property owner and say, this pool has been approved at, 10 feet away, have to move your home 25 feet away.
Yeah, I'm
because-
just trying to assess the probability of the issue Councilwoman Ekstrom brought up.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem,
Mayor,
yes, Councilman Barker.
in this situation, if that house isn't built, chances are they're going to be within 30 feet because that's going to be a side yard for the neighbors, not a backyard. Because you're going to run around a corner and nobody puts their side yard over 20 feet away. But so if the house isn't built, there's nothing we can do. But I say we didn't just how the ordinance is written is good.
Yeah, it surely devalues that lot though if they're limited to what they can build. So
Well, no,
as long,
what Brandon's saying. We can't tell a homeowner where you can and can't build their home. So if the pool goes in first, the home can still go wherever it wants to go.
yeah, I'm only saying that in consideration of the ordinance. If we pass this, knowing what we're doing to that lot, because that then if there's no home there, it restricts what kind of home can be built on there because they have to be right 35 feet away.
No. If that home isn't there, we can't restrict where they build because the pool doesn't affect their lot. It only affects the lot that it's built on. So that's why Brandon said, which one comes first? If the other home is built, then the 35 feet's in effect. If the other home is not built, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, but I'm saying if we didn't approve this ordinance, that wouldn't be an issue, right? I guess it could if they pushed their house right up 10 feet against the backyard.
right. And one additional note on the location of this pool that clarifies things. This is actually a cul-de-sac, is my recollection. You can see the corner. So I don't know exactly where, but the home would be located somewhere more. I'm gonna get a different tool. Somewhere more around here. And so it's set back and that increases the distance.
You'd say so in this case, it doesn't matter.
Right. If that's where the house is going to be built, and if it's on a cul-de-sac.
Mayor,
Councilman Swanson.
John, can you pull up a Google Maps aerial overhead view of this? Brandon, is this home right on the corner of that cul-de-sac?
Yes.
Okay, when I drove by there yesterday using the 1176 north,
Yeah,
whatever it was, it seemed to
1186
take,
north, 2750, yeah, east, north.
yeah, 2775. So it's that corner lot right there? Which
Yes.
lot is it?
Okay. Yes. So there is a home to the east. That's the lot that John's drawing on.
Oh, it's that lot. That didn't seem to be the address. The address seemed to be the home that had the foundation and the footings poured that's to the right of those two homes.
Okay.
So I'm
Um,
confused as to which lot it is.
It's definitely the lot with the blue square. On it.
Okay, so maybe the numbering was wrong or something like that, or, okay. Okay,
I think John's attempting to show the distance requirement.
okay,
however-
so they're
Yeah,
wanting that
that's-
pool on the 2775 side, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And their house will front 1175 east.
That's correct.
Okay,
At least the last time they showed us the plans.
okay.
Okay,
Okay, that answers my questions. Thanks.
I guess the applicant is with us. We could ask them if you have any other questions of the applicant, just to confirm what we're seeing. Would the council like to let the applicants speak to the issues? John, would you let them join us and state their name and where they currently live?
So they just need to unmute themselves.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello, my
Katie.
name is Katie. You can hear me? My name is
Yes.
Katie Kluge. And we're building right there. It'll be 2786 North, 1175 East. And what we're seeing right there is accurate. The home will face west, and we're hoping to put a pool there where the red square is. The distance between the pool and that home behind us will be roughly 55 feet. We've gone ahead and checked all those measurements. And we're really grateful that you guys are considering this ordinance for us.
Okay. Council, any other questions of Katie while she's available? Thank you, Katie, for clearing that up for us. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Okay, council, any further discussions or questions before we seek a motion?
So just
Mayor.
really quick.
We do have on the agenda, typically with land use ordinances, we do allow for public comment as part of it.
Okay, yes, I see that, sorry. So let's seek public comments then before we seek a motion.
So we do have a hand raised from Phoebe Moorhead.
Okay, Phoebe, would you like to state your name and address for us, please?
Hi, this is Phoebe Moorhead. Can you hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Perfect. My current address is 2771 North, 400 East. My future address is the one where you see the Ivory Homes, Oakmont Estates. So we're basically directly across the street from the one you're talking about. And in the coincidence of all coincidence, we're also building a pool. And so that's why we're on here. And there was two things I wanted to say. First, is that I'm their neighbor and I fully support them getting a pool right where they want it. And two, in our lot, we had some issues today. As a matter of fact, we think we figured it out, but I would love for the city planner to just clarify for us. Our map for our house said that we had to have a 20-foot setback in the rear yard. And now they're saying it's actually 10 feet. And so if you could just confirm that it's really 10 feet, that's all I'm here for.
Brandon, are you still with us?
Yes. The setback for homes is 20 feet. There are some exceptions for buildings that, for portions of the building that are unwalled porches or stairs, things like that. If you put walls on it, then it goes back to 20. So it's 20 feet with some exceptions that go to 10. As far as the pool, they have to be at least 10 feet from a property line and 35 feet from a home on an adjoining lot.
Perfect. That's what we wanted to know. So I was just asking about the pool and that's it. So thank you so much for answering the question.
Thank you. Any other public comments, John?
Not at this time.
Any further questions from the council? Okay, now we would seek a motion to approve ordinance 2020-22, which would be amending the North Ogden City Code as outlined in chapter 11-10-16 regarding family swimming standards. And then also 11-2-1, where we changed some definition of words and terms. Do we have a motion?
Mayor,
Councilman Severing?
I'm going to try to get this right with all the numbers, but I move that we accept ordinance 2020-22, amending the North Ogden City Ordinance, chapter 11-10-16 for family swimming pool standards, as well as the verbiage that was added by both the planning commission and the city council tonight. Is that good?
Thank you, Councilman Severing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Have a second from Councilman Barker. Okay, do we have any further discussion? Okay, if not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Mayor,
Roll
I think
call.
we need a roll call vote.
Well, according to what Annette sent me, Annette, are you with us? You said we just needed a voice vote.
Mayor, you do need a roll call vote.
Okay. I'll disregard these instructions.
Okay.
All right. Councilman Swanson, thank you. We'll go with a roll call vote. Councilman Swanson,
Yes.
Councilwoman Ekstrom,
Yes.
Councilwoman Stoker,
Yes.
Councilman Barker,
Yes.
and let's see, Councilman Severing.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item number 5 now, which is a discussion or action to consider an agreement for the sale of 0.12 acres of property from the old Public Works, and our presenter will be John Call, our city manager and attorney. John?
Sorry, Mayor, I lost my unmute button. So we also have on the call or with us, Val Paul, who is the representative from the vet hospital and the building owners and the property owners. So I'm just going to pull up what the council has seen in the past related to the property. And then also we can talk about a couple options that have been presented by the owners of the hospital related to options for the discussion related to the expansion of Bicentennial Park and additional nuances in this area. So this was the original request. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for the first part of this discussion related to this portion outlined in red is what the animal had requested as part of to acquire and then expand their parking lot so that they could add some more employee parking and meet some other needs they have currently. It also, because of this discussion and because of other discussions at the General Plan Steering Committee and the Planning Commission and even the City Council, there's been some talk about the expansion of the park to the south, which is our Bicentennial Park, as well as the closing of the road. And so I think with all those discussions and all the stuff that's been going on tonight, we're hoping to get some direction from the council on the direction you'd like to go so that we can work out details of this agreement if the council is going to support an agreement for the sale of the property, as well as potentially reach a conclusion or at least reach a direction so we can ask the engineers on which direction they would like, or we need them to do some work to do some amendments to this area of the city. So I'm also going to pull up a map that was provided by the animal hospital and share that with you. Or I guess there's two maps here as possible options. And Val, if you want to unmute yourself, then you could provide the council some feedback about the pictures that you guys have given to us as well.
Can you hear me okay?
You can, Val.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time tonight. And I'll have to admit that this has kind of morphed a little bit since we initiated it, as I'm trying to wrap my brain around the greater good. John's tried to explain, some of the requirements from UDOT and intersection distance from the upgrade and how that changes the traffic flow pattern. And I've talked to the other business owners and partners in this facility, two businesses, the veterinary hospital on the top and the pediatric dentist on the bottom. Both businesses the client base is driven by drive-by. And so that's why we, spent the premium dollars to purchase this location, remove 3 older homes. One was a condemned home. And so you can appreciate that I have a fair amount of concern about closing down one of the major roads. What I don't know is that city driven or is that UDOT driven?
That would be city driven.
Can you help me understand the benefits of closing down one of the major roads that goes by our 2 businesses?
I can give you my opinion, and it's only my opinion, is one, that's a very dangerous intersection when people are turning right to get onto Washington Boulevard off of Pleasant View Drive. I actually talked to the Pleasant View mayor about this, and he's indicated he's almost been in several accidents there and has seen numerous ones. Additionally, we'd like to see traffic go down 300 east. It would create a safety situation for those people pulling out of the Lee's parking lot. I know we've had one citizen killed there, and it's very dangerous trying to get out of the parking lot to turn left going east out of the Lee's parking lot. We believe that with that additional traffic going down 300 east, it would give us a better chance of having a light there on 26/2700 at 300 east, which would make that also a safer intersection. So those are the 2 things that I've heard discussions about. Val, I'll be happy to let any of the other council members speak to their thoughts. Council, do you have any additional thoughts in regards to Val's question?
Mayor, that's been the conversation that I remember all along as we've talked about expanding Bicentennial Park. It wasn't to close the road to expand the park, it was close the road to improve safety. That's just a nuts intersection there. And it will be even worse when the reconstruction is done next year. And instead of, just essentially 2 lanes there's going to be more. And it will be even more difficult for those people who are going north and wanting to go west on Pleasant View and turning left across essentially 3 lanes of traffic. That's going to be a nightmare. And then as we talked about improving the safety there afterwards, quite a bit afterwards, actually, the thought came along that, well, maybe we could then move or improve and expand Bicentennial Park and make that more of a gathering place than it is now. It's already quite a gathering place for cyclists and families and the such, but that was the order in which things happened over the previous years.
Thank you, Councilman Swanson, for that information. I know the General Plan Steering Committee, and listening into their last meeting, is also recommending the expansion of Barker Park. But any other council members have a response to Val's question?
I do. Dr.
Councilwoman?
Paul, we definitely don't want to decrease visibility to your business. Of course, that's definitely not. But we don't want anybody to get hurt or killed. And when we just get so much more traffic, we just have to keep that in mind. And so what we're hoping is, again, by closing that off, is that even with that part closed off, that the increased traffic will still make up for the visibility of your business just on the other side. And then you'll also have, of course, if we are able to expand Bicentennial Park, you'll have a lot of visibility from people visiting there also. So, and, correct me if I'm wrong, John, did I remember that they will be able to still have an exit from that? That's kind of one of the stipulations, that they can exit out of their parking lot still on that road. They get like half of the road on, and that was kind of what I understood, but that was a little bit fuzzy to me. So can you clarify that also, John?
So state law, and I'm going to give you the state law version and then my opinion. State law says that landowners are guaranteed access to their property, not necessary convenient or most commercially beneficial access. So what that means is the state can put up a freeway and force your customers to go a different direction to get to your property, and they don't have to pay you for it. I would recommend to the council that with this discussion that we still provide access to that lower parking lot to the 400 East or Washington Boulevard in some way, because I think that is the most fair to the property owner, if that makes sense. So what is shown on your screen now still gives direct access to 400 East, but that doesn't mean that's the only option available. And I don't even know that this is a commercially, or I'm not sure if this is a great option because we haven't talked to engineers, but there might be an option to put a driveway here. And this is very crude and not aligned in the right spot. But to do something like that to make sure there's access to the parking lot in conjunction with the sale of the property to make sure that they're not losing parking stalls with that access. But it's all part of the discussion and part of the negotiation between the landowners and the city on what really is the best for everybody. And I think that if we work on it, we can come to a good solution. We just need to make sure that I think from the city side, we don't want to take the strict interpretation that UDOT uses because we want to be more fair to our small businesses and provide that commercially viable access out to Washington.
So John, it sounded like you were trying to draw something. I didn't see any drawing on the map. Does everybody else see his drawing on the map or no?
It's that little blue. You have to look closely because it kind of blends in.
I mean, I could put it in red, see if that'll help.
Yeah.
It was those lines that I showed you the other day. But essentially a driveway out where the power poles are or somewhere around the power poles. And I don't know that that's a great option because we haven't had an engineer look at it. I just want to make sure that we know all the options because I think the general plan steering committee is somewhat excited about the idea of expanding the park. And if we turn the existing asphalt into parking instead of a roadway, then that limits the ability to expand the park. But that might be a very economical way to accomplish everything the city's trying to do because we wouldn't have to tear up and remove a bunch of stuff. We would essentially just restripe for parking, make it clear it's a dead end road and eliminate the access.
So it sounds like it's more of an engineering problem at this point. We want to get an engineer looking at it to see what options are actually viable. And then we'll maybe come back and look for the best one that's going to be as close to a win-win as we can get that's engineeringly feasible, if that makes sense.
I think it would be good to get some feedback about the different options from the council. Even just the two pictures that are as part of this document. You've got this one that shows the road dead ending right at the end of the parking lot that's already in existence, as opposed to this one with the parking extending further to the west. And I know that's not a big nuance, but it can affect the areas where how we get access to the property behind for the public works property and things like that. And so I also am confident that the animal hospital probably has some comments about this red path coming out and the council should listen to those and try and understand where everybody's coming from on this, because it's not going to be a simple discussion, I think.
Well, from our take, we want to be we want to get the greatest amount of good for the least amount of cost. And having access to that lower parking is essential. when you describe that there's going to be 3 lanes and that it's going to be hard for people to cross those to get into our businesses, that's concerning. And in the past, I'll be honest, the access to our business has not been maintained during construction. And so when we're talking about a real major change here to that intersection and all the way down to 2700, I'm very concerned about traffic patterns and our ability to keep our clients in the parking lot so we can help them. So our thoughts with these 2 renditions is, particularly the one that has the green trees on the side, is there's some tricky parts with the cell tower. And how do you use that space? Do we really want to dig up a bunch of asphalt and then lay down some more asphalt? Or can there be a blend where there's access to parking during the daytime, neither business is weekend or after 6 o'clock? So for event parking or weekend parking for Santa or some other event that might be in Bicentennial Park, it seems like this might be a blend of ideas that doesn't cost a lot to pull off. Does that make sense?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilman Swanson.
John, in the picture that we're looking at now, so the dead end would be right at 400 East. Is that correct?
The parking lot would start at 400 East, and the dead end would end up over here on the edge of the trees on the east side of the west side of the picture.
How would that parking lot be accessed?
People would come in this way.
See, that's one of my biggest concerns is people trying to turn left across. It's going to be 2 southbound lanes and a turning lane. So it's effectively 3 lanes of traffic. And then with the homes that are being built further up the hill, both in Pleasant View and in North Ogden at the top of 450, that traffic is just going to get worse and worse. And I don't see where it eliminates trying to turn left to go north out of that off of Pleasant View, but it doesn't provide any additional safety for people that are darting over, trying to make that left. I mean, every day as I come through that intersection, I see folks that are on the far right as we come across 2600, and they dart all the way across 2 lanes of traffic to dive into that left turn lane to turn left there at Pleasant View. I would rather see them turn. We'll have a dual turn, left turn lane coming north off of Washington to go west on 2600. I would rather see them get in that and be on a protected light, turn left, go to 300 East, turn right, make another right, and then come back down around to this parking area. Something along those lines.
But that effectively changes, you can imagine trying to get into our businesses when you have to make that many turns.
I do understand, and I really.
So dead end Pleasant View, and then you put that many lanes across, it's going to make it very, very difficult to get into our businesses. So it shuts us off. And if it's not convenient, which is why we bought this, then it makes it, there's 7 other veterinarians, there's 15 other dentists. So you have 2 very loyal, very we love being we love being in North Ogden. But yeah, at what point in time are we able to still take care of why we bought this? And I understand the greater good, I really do, and that's why we've made these proposals. But there needs to be, this has to be in the top 2 in the discussion is how do we keep these 2 businesses so that they we don't just cut off their access.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Mayor, would this be a good topic for a work session where we can sit down, maybe mask up and sit down at a table and social distance and maybe at the senior center in the middle of the center there, and have some maps and just kind of talk through different options?
I think it's probably a little bit premature to make a decision tonight. I think we want to look at all options and try to come up with a solution that's a win-win. And I think getting together and green lighting or just talking out loud, we may come up with some solutions that would be acceptable. So I think that's a great idea, but would appreciate input from the rest of the council.
And Mayor, just so everyone's clear, that the engineers have identified 3 movements in this intersection that they're concerned about. One of them is the left-hand movement up the hill. One is a straight across movement, and the other is the opposite straight across movement. Those are the 3 that they feel are safety hazards at this intersection. The left-hand movement off of Washington onto Pleasant View is actually not as big of a safety hazard, because if someone's coming north up that road, they can see everything that's coming at them and have all the information they need to make that movement. It's these other 3 movements that have kind of spurred the engineers to recommend that this intersection be closed at some point in one of the legs, and in particular the west leg on Pleasant View Drive. So just for the group, those are the 3 that they're worried about from a safety standard.
And I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, John, I believe the general plan has always anticipated the closure of that street. I think it's actually in the general plan, isn't it?
It is. I can pull up our transportation master plan and show that to you.
What if the right turn coming off of Pleasant View Drive, if that was a private drive, what if that was one way? And that, for those who are coming down, that the dentist, a lot of theirs were coming from the south. A lot of our clients were coming from above. And so that might be something to consider as you come off of Pleasant View Drive, is that you can only turn to the right and then make use of, other means to get back up. So yes, there'll be some who will be above and it'll be less convenient getting out, but getting in, they have a way to do it.
Why don't, Val, if you're okay with that, with Councilman Swanson's suggestion that we kind of table this for tonight and get together and talk about some of these ideas that are coming into our head and see if we can't come up with a solution. Safety is obviously has to be taken into consideration here.
Yes.
But also, as Councilwoman Ekstrom stated, we appreciate the businesses in our community, and we want to try to avoid all we can diminishing their opportunities. So our goal ought to be able to try to come up with a safe intersection there and a way not to diminish your business, and see if we can't come up with a solution there. If you're okay with getting together with us and giving us some time to think, and you some time to think with your partners there, and then we can maybe see in a work session if we come up with a good solution.
I think that's a great idea, and I would welcome that.
Okay. Other council members, any comments on that?
Mayor, I've got a comment.
Councilman Barker?
Just for tonight, we're talking about the sale of the land, whether we want to sell or not. I have no problem saying let's sell the land to them. We've already had the public hearing and surplused it. We can talk about access in the future, but is it possible just to sell the land to them tonight? Because whether we sell or not, we've got to deal with access.
Well, I think there's one. I think there's something we've got to determine, and as John brought up, is what the sale of the land, what it's used for, and how it in regards to the closure of the street. and the state ordinance. I think before we make a decision to sell, but just my thought, because, if we can't work it out, there's probably no use selling the ground.
I agree.
Mayor,
So
Councilman Severing?
I was just thinking, let's make sure that when we have this meeting, which I think is an excellent job for an excellent idea for collaboration, let's make sure we've got one of the engineers who can help in making those kinds of decisions. Let's make sure that he or she is there as this collaboration occurs.
That's a good point, and I would hope that even prior to that, we get some ideas from the engineer that we can share at the meeting. So good point, Councilman Severing.
Mayor.
Is that you, Councilwoman Ekstrom?
Yes, that was actually the original point I was going to make before John started talking. But what I would like to see is all of the different possibilities, and then pluses and minuses for each one. We've got pros and cons for each possibility that we have that is feasible from an engineering perspective. So I think if we can have each of them like drawn out, especially with an increased view of the actual street view area of it, so that we can actually see, how wide is it going to be? How many cars do we think are going to be coming down? Let's kind of, I like to visually understand what I'm going to be facing as a driver. Dr. Paul is our veterinarian. I want to know, am I going to pull in there? What am I going to face, and how am I going to be able to get out? So if we can get those possibilities kind of like, here's option 1, here's option 2, here's option 3. And then if we all sit down with those, then we can choose the best option, and then which part of the land would be best for him to do, what access would be best. Does that make sense? I'm probably addressing this mostly to John and with Lauren and our engineering team to see what we can come up with.
I would appreciate that help, even an overlay of what the Washington Boulevard expansion is going to look like, so that we know how are we going to get in, how are we going to get out. That would be helpful for us as we're brainstorming different solutions to this.
John, you can get them an overlay of the road widening project, I assume.
Yes, we can. We can get the plans to him. And Lauren, he is on the call, so he is listening to this. And between me and him and the streets department, we can get some rough plans out that wouldn't cost us a bunch of money to put together.
Will that include the utilities, John, and how that, those utilities play off of Pleasant View Drive?
Yeah, we could identify which utilities service the building and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Okay, so any other comments from the council?
Mayor, can I just ask one quick question of Dr. Paul?
You betcha.
I'm trying to remember, I've only probably driven down there 1 million times in my life, past, down 400 like that. Dr. Paul, what's the north? Is there a building or a house? I mean, they're both the same, but what's immediately north of your location?
There's a small home that's there.
You guys don't have an option to purchase it or anything like sometime in the future, would you?
We'd looked at purchasing it in the past, and it was quite expensive for the 12 to 13 parking lots that we were looking to put.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we need a motion to table this item on our agenda?
No, I think we're good to just move forward and bring it back.
Okay, we will do that. Val, thank you so much for joining us tonight and expressing your concerns and ideas. We appreciate you joining us and giving us some input. and you've got our commitment. We'll consider your comments. So thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Appreciate your time. Everyone look forward to the working session.
All right, we'll get back with you and get that scheduled. Thank you.
Goodbye now.
Okay, John. We're in item 6 now, our training and discussion on the Open Meeting Act. I have you listed as the presenter, so if you would like to proceed.
Okay, so this is the most exciting part of the evening. I know you've all been just waiting. Yes, Charlotte and Phil both raising the roof. So every year we do an Open and Public Meetings Act training. Oftentimes we get that training at our annual conferences, but with this year and the tightening of the budget, we're not doing those travel trainings. And so here you get a little bit of training from me. I know all of you have been through this before, or at least have seen it happen. The last person who did the training for us was the Utah Property Rights Ombudsman, Brent Bateman. And he was here and he answered some questions and talked about some things. And I wanted to reemphasize what I think he emphasized at the beginning of his presentation, which is, the purpose of this training and the purpose of the rules related to the Open and Public Meetings Act. And I'm just going to read it straight from the code. It says, "It is the intent of the legislature that the state, its agencies, and its political subdivisions take their actions openly and conduct their deliberations openly." So the whole purpose of the Open and Public Meetings Act is to make it so that residents and citizens can see what's going on in the city and see why the individual elected officials are making the decisions they're making. So because of that, as you know, everything that the council does, you do in an open meeting as a quorum. And that has some things that work really well and some things that make it a little more difficult to function government from a government perspective. But that's the way we do it because we want to make sure that it's open and it's as a public of a process as we can. What that means, and we are constantly reminding citizens and developers and other people of this, anytime there's 3 or more council members in a space together and you're talking about city business, it's a public meeting, which means it should be recorded and it should be able to be attended by anybody, any resident or other interested party. So oftentimes we get compared to other political subdivisions, specifically the county. And I just want to make it clear that a quorum of the county commission is 2 commissioners and a quorum of the city council is 3 council members. And the commission actually has some special rules that allow 2 of them, which is a quorum, to meet and talk together because they can't talk to each other without it constituting a quorum, which is a little different for the city. So it's entirely appropriate for a council member or 2 council members to meet together or to talk with residents without it being a public meeting. But as soon as that third person, that third council member gets involved, that's when it needs to be a public meeting. And I'm not aware of situations where that's been a question in the past, because every time that, particularly it seems like the development community would like to ask questions of 3 council members or 4 council members at a time. And they're always very understanding when we let them know that the council's not gonna be doing that. I do want to also make it clear that just because you're on the council doesn't mean that you can't interact outside of a meeting in a way that is either what they call a chance meeting or a social meeting. So if all of you, for example, had attended the lighting ceremony over at the Bicentennial Park that we do every year, technically, even though that's an official city event, it's not a public meeting because the council is there essentially not in their official capacity to hold a meeting, but they're there more ceremonially to light the tree and do that type of thing. And so that wouldn't constitute a public meeting, at least to the sense that we need to do a recording or anything like that. But obviously it's a public meeting that people are invited to attend and participate in. But it actually, the state code does allow for councils to meet socially. So everyone could get together at the mayor's house for a barbecue in the spring once we're past all this social distancing thing. But if that does occur, then there are some certain rules that need to happen. The most specific of which I'm sure you can guess is you don't talk city business and you don't make decisions. So when the mayor gets those stakes ready for us all, we'll just make sure that nothing is discussed or not, or yeah, nothing's discussed that shouldn't be. We'll just talk about Phil's beard the whole time. Any questions about anything so far, council?
Just to clarify, so it's fine for the mayor to meet with 2 council people, correct?
Yes. The only time, and as an attorney, I always have to say this is when it's not okay. But if there's an ordinance being proposed that would limit or expand the mayor's powers, where by definition the mayor would be a voting member, I would probably recommend that not happen. But we haven't had that happen in the city in the 8 years that I've been involved, so I don't know why we would in the near future.
I think the ordinance would be probably more to limit the mayor's abilities instead of increase them.
Well, I don't know about that. So another thing, and this comes up quite often, is the minutes of our meetings. So just so everyone's clear, the written minutes that the council adopts are the official records of the meeting. So even though we keep an audio tape and we put that on a link to that on our website, and we do the YouTube videos and we do all these other things, it's technically the written document that the council approves at the future meeting that becomes the official record of the meeting. And so because of that, in the past, the city has been pretty expansive in what we include in those minutes. But I should let you know that most cities do not do verbatim minutes like we do. Most cities do essentially a summary style of a minute. And I just thought I'd bring that up since we're on the topic. We do allow for some things to be closed. Does anyone want brownie points for being able to guess what all the reasons that we close meetings are? Oh, Councilwoman Ekstrom.
I don't know if I can get them all, but I remember one is if we're talking personnel. So if it's, an individual person that we're discussing
Yep.
and it's a personnel matter. Another is like a financial transaction. So like when we're discussing actual amounts for particular, sale of property or something that the city is. And I think those are the only 2 I can remember there. But I think there's another one.
Can I get a half a brownie point if I add lawsuits?
Yep, that's a brownie point.
Councilman Swanson, will you award that to me, please?
Yes, sir. Can we do it like a military promotion where we leave the back of the pen off and we pound it to your chest?
That might be good. Thank you.
Okay.
I thought he was actually expecting a plate of brownies.
Oh, now we can do that. We can do that too.
So there's 2 other reasons, and then I'm going to also add some details about the sale of property. One is collective bargaining. So that's, if you're dealing with a police union or a fire union or another type of union where those are allowed to happen in a closed meetings. And then there's one related to security. So if the city is deploying security devices for the police or for other things where the disclosure could compromise the effectiveness of that security, that would be allowed. You can close it for allegations related to criminal conduct. That somewhat ties back into the first one of personnel issues. And then on the sale of property, the nuance with that is if you can close it for that portion of the discussion, which would compromise the ability of the city to get the most money out of the deal. So you can't close it to talk about whether or not you should sell a property, but you get to close it to talk about what you might ask, what an appraisal might say, those type of things. And so it's just a nuance in the code. But one thing we always want to be careful of with that as well is we want to make sure that we've let people know which property we're talking about selling before we go into the closed meeting, to just make sure it's clear, because it's good for the council to get all the information they can. There are times that closed meetings can be unclosed. I haven't ever seen this happen, but essentially if someone believes that a meeting was not closed appropriately, they can ask a court to review it, and the judge would listen to the tape of the meeting and then make a decision on which portions of the meeting should have been closed. And if there were any that should have been left open, the discussion went off topic, then those would become part of the public record again, and the judge would be the decision maker on that. The one exception is that we do not make recordings of personnel discussions. The court has found that, or the state has said they do not want those type of things are clearly not public record. And so they don't, because it could temper the discussion if people know that, hey, someone might hear this later on if I'm talking about some concerns I have with an employee or other appointed official. So we do something that's come up in the past, not in the city, but another city that I had some interactions with. Residents are allowed to record the meeting if they would like to, as long as they don't disrupt the meeting. So, they can set up a camera or an audio recorder at any part in the room, as long as it's not disrupting the flow of the meeting. And that's part of the rights that the state has given residents to do. And then the council is allowed to ask for people to be removed from a meeting. But that is only if a person willfully disrupts the meeting to the extent that orderly conduct is seriously compromised. And of course, they don't define what seriously compromised means, but it typically would be within the discretion of the mayor to be the one who makes the decision on whether or not decorum has been compromised.
John?
Yeah.
Just 2 questions. In the situation you just mentioned, if I know we have police officers there that will hopefully never get to that point to physically remove someone, but wouldn't it be better just to adjourn the meeting in some instances?
That could typically be a good approach. One issue you have is if you have, for example, a truth and taxation hearing where you've told the residents this is the night to come and participate, you would be legally obligated to allow everyone who showed up the ability to talk, unless they got disruptive. Although in theory, if they're communicating their thoughts and feelings, and not that, you could argue that's their time to talk. But if they were disrupting other people's time to talk, then that might be the time that someone would be asked to participate in another way in the meeting. So
the second question is, just so we're clear on this, the proper way to make sure we've entered into a closed meeting, so we don't find ourselves in a position with somebody questioning if we did it correctly. Could you just do a refresher for us on that, just to help us avoid that situation?
Yeah, so typically the council, it would be listed as an agenda item. The council would do a motion saying the reasons we were headed into a closed meeting. And then a majority of the council president would have to vote in favor of going into a council meeting or into a closed session. If there were 4 council members present and the vote was 2-2, then mayor would be the deciding vote on whether you went into a closed session. But I have been in closed sessions before with previous council members where things were starting to head off topic and I've had to remind them to stay on topic. And I will tell you, as the city attorney, if we ever have a closed session, I'll gently nudge you back on topic if we're headed off topic. And Annette also has helped with that in the past as well. And it hasn't typically been a gross abuse, if that makes sense. It was more talking about the sale of a property, for example, and then the topic turns to a different subdivision in the city or a different piece of property. And the staff has just reminded council, hey, we can only focus on this one property. We're not allowed to talk about the other stuff. So.
And then, John, the vote on the actual decision that took place in the closed meeting takes place in public, correct?
That's correct. And the council's, I've never been in a closed session where the council has voted on anything in a closed meeting. And it ties back again to that first discussion. Some city councils and other entities have come out of closed sessions before and without talking about it at all, say, well, we're going to approve this contract based on everything we talked about in the closed session, and it'll pass, and the residents don't know what happened. So we've been really good in the past in this city about making it clear what the decision is, the reasons why, and then if it related to anything that was in the closed session, let's say an appraised value or things like that, that information isn't disclosed until after a contract has been negotiated. So, for example, we had a piece of property we were selling and we had an appraisal on it, and the council came out and said, we agree to put the property under contract for this price. And I can't remember what it was. But the appraisal wasn't disclosed because that would give the buyer of the property an advantage of knowing what the appraisal of the property was and whether or not they were getting a good deal or a bad deal. Yeah. So did that answer your question, Mayor?
Yeah, I'm just grateful we have good council members like Councilman Swanson who reminds the mayor he can't do that. So.
Councilman Swanson was a member of a couple of those council meetings where Annette and John had to gently nudge us to stay on course. It's very easy to get distracted.
Yeah. But anyway, thanks for reminding me on my first closed meeting.
And then, so there again, just to reiterate, I mean, the whole point of the Open and Public Meetings Act is to make sure the residents can participate or at least watch the deliberations occur. And our city is, as you remember from the presentation by the ombudsman last time, that we are not obligated to provide public comments at the beginning and the end of the meetings, but I think it's good that we do, and I think our residents appreciate it. And not every city does. Farmington doesn't, for example, and they haven't for about a decade. And I think that in a lot of ways it hurts the ability of the council to relate to residents. And so, as I know that you all do, but just keep encouraging residents to participate and share their thoughts and feelings, email, Zoom or any way they can. So any other final questions? If not, that's my training presentation.
Well, thank you, John, for spending that time with us. I was not elected the last time that the ombudsman came, but I'll just repeat my comment I made in that meeting. I would always rather be safe than sorry. And there's very, very few reasons we shouldn't have public invited to all of our meetings. I know there were some questions on how that related to committee meetings, John, in regards to, I think if I recall right, the actual law says if they have the ability to approve the expenditure of funds and a couple other things, it's required to be a public meeting. I think we've taken the approach that all of our meetings we've done in the public. And I just believe that's the safest way to do things. We have nothing to hide. We've committed to transparency, and I'm proud of this council for that commitment. So maybe you could just expand on the committee side of this to make sure that we understand that.
Yeah, so let me see if I can just find the definition really quick of a public body. So those are the groups that are required to be open in public meetings. And I'll just read the definition. So it's any administrative, advisory, executive, or legislative body that is created by ordinance or resolution, consists of 2 or more people, expends, disperses, or is supported in whole or in part by tax revenue, and is vested with the authority to make decisions regarding the public's business. And I will tell you that last prong is probably the one where the most questions come up, is whether or not that group is vested with the authority. But those are essentially the 4 prongs that, to be a public body, you have to meet. A good example is the planning commission. The city's required to have a planning commission. It is supported by tax revenue, even though they don't expend city taxes. There's 2 or more people, and they are specifically vested with the authority to make decisions regarding administrative applications as well as legislative recommendations to the council. There are other groups in the city, for example, when the planning department meets, where that group wasn't created by an ordinance or a state rule, and so that one wouldn't qualify. And then there's everything in between, as far as groups that either were, the way that we kind of approach it from the city is, if the council's the group that created the committee and that committee is making independent decisions or independent recommendations to the council, then we make those public meetings. If they are operating under specific direction from the council within confined parameters and don't really have the ability to spend money, then those groups are not typically seen as public committees.
I think the ombudsman told us basically, don't take a chance.
Yeah.
Because the rules are so vague in some cases. So we've always taken the approach, I think, of being open, transparent in all of our committees.
Yeah, the one exception, or not exception, but we oftentimes have selection committees, which will interview and select people to do work for the city, or for example, most of our department heads were selected by a committee of a mix of council members and other individuals. And so that's, those are the type of committees that even though it's a selection committee, it's not an official committee because they're not expending funds and things like that.
Well, then does the council approve those committees, or are those just put together internally, John?
Usually the council or the mayor is the one who puts them together. But then the final decision comes to the council. So it's a recommendation. There again, they're kind of operating in very strict confines that the council has given them direction on.
Okay.
So,
Council, any questions for John before we wrap up the training?
I had a quick one.
Councilwoman Ekstrom?
Yeah, so John, our Arts Guild, is that going to be under the one that needs to have a public meeting requirement also?
yes.
Okay.
And in theory, eventually that will become a 501c3 if everything operates as it had originally been conceptualized. And so it would become its own entity, like the Parks and Trails Committee.
Okay, thank you, Councilwoman Ekstrom. Any other questions? John, thank you for spending time with us. We appreciate it. It's always good to have a reminder, keep us refreshed. Let's move on to item number 7. Tonight we've asked Councilwoman Stoker, Council Member Severing, and Council Member Ekstrom to give us brief reports on their assignments. So Councilwoman Stoker, could we start with you? Do you have anything to report this evening?
A few things. Last council meeting, we talked, or the public safety meeting that we talked about was planning a couple of open houses in October for to go over for public input on the public safety building. And so we've got a couple open houses planned, and hopefully at least one of the two will transpire. And I think the first one is on the 6th. Is that right, John?
That was the original night we had been shooting for. There's a conflict with the senior center. So the chief and the chairman of the committee and the mayor are talking about other options, possibly doing it at the police station itself.
Okay, so that is in the works. And also it's just to let everybody know, nothing has been finalized. It's just, getting public input and seeing where we're going from there. And also the interviewings were completed for a new officer, and one was selected. It's Braxton Lucas, and he started today. And he came from the Weber County Sheriff's Office, and he was in corrections. And he still needs these LEO block of the academy, and that will take him from October to December to finish. And then by the time he finishes with the school and field training, he should be able to be out on his own by March. And also they've ordered and have received some of the equipment for 2 of their new police vehicles, the patrol vehicles. And they're hoping to get it installed before the snow season. Get it to Tyrell so he can get it installed. And also to remind everybody and to encourage everyone to please secure your vehicles and your homes and keep your valuables secured, so it deters crimes of opportunity. And also, it seems like at different times of the year and season, scams are going around, and there are some going around again. And the citizens can refer to the Facebook page of the police, or also our city website page for information on the trending of scams and what to watch for and how not to be taken in and become a victim. And some of them, the red flags are if they're asking you to send money or to pay with a gift card, it's a dead giveaway that it's a scam. So other than that, great job, guys. We appreciate our police officers.
I say thank you, Councilmember Stoker. I appreciate that. Councilmember Severing, would you like to report on what's happening at Public Works?
I would. I'm going to read you what Dave Espinoza sent me by email. He currently is on a vacation right now. He wrote, Councilman Severing, things are going great at Public Works. The new work order system with Kyle has been a wonderful improvement to the team. We are getting work orders much quicker, and the communication with the citizens has been wonderful. I've attached the progress report, no significant changes, but we are moving right along. He concludes by saying, I don't know if you heard, but we got the opportunity this last week to help our neighboring cities with cleanup. We have a wonderful crew at Public Works. South Ogden was very grateful for our help. We provided 8 guys, 4 dump trucks, and our loader for 5 days of cleanup in South Ogden and Washington Terrace. Thanks, Dave Espinoza, Public Works Director.
Thank you, Councilman Severing. And I'm proud of our Public Works folks. They did take on that challenge as we talked with the other mayors. And Dave reported to me that when he went out to South Ogden and Washington Terrace, he described it as a war zone. They were really affected. South Ogden City has agreed to pay the overtime for our Public Works folks, but I always believe that, we're in this together. There'll be one day when we need their help also. And so I'm glad that they went out there. I'm also proud that before they went out to those cities, that they took care of our residents first. I know as I was out driving around the city this morning assessing damage, that I would call Dave and say, hey, we've got a problem here. And I saw some senior citizens really struggling to try to clean up some things in the street in their yard. And our public works folks were over there making sure the roads were clear and taking care of issues in our city. And they did an awesome job. So please pass on our appreciation, Councilmember Severing, to our public works group. And I'm glad to see that we're getting the work orders entered in and taken care of. I think it is so important to be able to respond to our citizens in a timely manner. And I think this will be, very helpful to them. So,
Mayor,
yes,
you want me to mention also with the Economic Development Committee, so the council is aware that we've created a charter, which is I think is a great charter, kind of a mission for Economic Development Committee. And then we also have Janice Jones overseeing a renewal of the Spend It in North Ogden campaign. So we will have future information about that in the future.
yes, I've listened into that, and I think Terry Bexel, who's the chairman of that department, is making a really concentrated effort to move things along there. And I know one of the first things they are working on is trying to encourage spending locally, along with some other things. So thank you for that report, Councilman Severing.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Ekstrom, would you like to give us a report on what's going on in Parks and Rec?
Sure. We're just wrapping up the pool season, so I chose to concentrate my remarks mostly on the report from how the pool season went. We were really unsure about what it was going to be like at all. I sent a little spreadsheet to John. Do you have that, John? Could you put that up for everybody to see? This is just numbers from last year compared to this year. And mostly what we saw is that where one door is closed, another opens. We had, we really had no idea what was going to happen. So this is kind of how it compared last year to this year. So as you can see, swimming lessons were down, but we opened late. So we lost a section of swimming lessons. One of the things that was in our favor was that it was just like the ideal summer of high temperatures and low precipitation, which is not necessarily great for the environment and all that, but for a pool season it's really good because we were able to stay open and have high attendance. The other thing that we had was going for us was that we were really the only entertainment that was open. We had museums were closed, all the other pools were closed. So, we had a lot of feedback from residents and, surrounding community members just thanking us for having someplace to go. There were only a few days that were actually at the end of the season, which normally is more of a slower time, like in August, that the pool reached its 50% at capacity, where we had to, kind of limit people coming in. One thing that was really affected were the Bowery reservations, which were the kind of the birthday parties where, we were limited on the number of people that could attend. Season passes, of course, right when we were selling season passes was right when we had the major restrictions happening, which is, March and April. So those were, of course, quite a bit down. Group reservations, the same kind of thing. They were too larger groups to rent out the pool. So one of the things that we'll have to kind of play with the numbers was because the reservations, a lot of them got canceled in June, but then they rebooked for next June. So Tiffany's going to work with Evan on how that looks with the fiscal year versus the pool season. It kind of makes it a little bit difficult to wrap our heads around, but those are the numbers and why they are down. Because of the restrictions, we chose not to participate in Groupon this year because we weren't sure. Normally we're trying to increase, of course, the excess capacity. We of course want to have as many people there as we can, but since we didn't know what kind of capacity we were going to run into and we were limited to 50%, we didn't try and sell any of the Groupons this time. So what happened was that more people were coming anyway that would have bought it on Groupon, but they paid full price. But we don't know that that's going to be a strategy we're going to have next year, since we're not going to have those restrictions. We're still going to want to try and get as many people as possible in. We hope, assuming that we have restrictions that come off. What she did that you can see that requires a little explanation. The admissions from 2019 full, she added both of those together to compare to what we got this year. So that's kind of where that, to go from 125,000 to 213,000 is a greater than 115% increase. But she did add those Groupons in from last year as well. So I don't have the numbers on here, but I can tell that the Snack Shack was up about $8,000 in sales. So the city gets 15% of that also. And generally for what it could have been a disaster, has turned out to actually turn out pretty well. We were 94% of total revenues from this year compared to last year. So, on the whole, there were a lot of people that really enjoyed having the pool. I love having the pool to go to. I think it's just a great asset in the community. It brings a lot of people in, and they stay, and they patronize other businesses when they come into town, which is, I think, one of the things that we use the RDA funds, which is what's covering the bond on the pool. So that's really it. There are lots of other things going on in Parks and Rec, but just in the interest of being brief, which I always have struggled with anyway, I will just do the pool reports.
How about the progress on the Arts Guild? Have we interviewed everyone and made any decisions? How's that moving forward?
That I don't know, but I will make a note. So when I talk to Tiffany, I'll find that out.
If you would, please. I think
I would.
I know they've talked to some people, but I hope they'd have a chance to interview everyone that submitted an application.
That's on my agenda, to speak with her about the whole plan for the amphitheater and the Arts Guild, and everything was going to be the focus of my report for next month. So hopefully I'll have lots of information there.
Thank you very much for your report. Very good. Thank you. I believe in my discussions with Evan and John, you can correct me here, but I believe our subsidy out of the general fund was about $11,000 or $12,000 more this year than previous, which is not bad based upon the situations we're facing. And I would just say, as you all know, I was one that was very nervous about opening the pool. But I don't believe we had any information that would say that COVID cases were spread from there. And we did receive positive comments back. I think the team down there did a great job in trying to follow Morgan Weber health guidelines. So that was good. So thank you for that report. Any questions from other council members on those reports?
So Mayor, let me just add one detail to make it clear. The 2020 numbers is everything from June of this year to August, and 2019 is the same June to August, and our fiscal year ends on July. So the use of funds you just talked about deals with basically the last half of the swim season last summer in 2019 and the first half in 2020. Right. So it's kind of this weird.
It's a split. Yeah, we've got some months from last fiscal year and some from the current fiscal year. So yes.
And Tiffany always tries to present to the council the swim season the whole summer so that you can see how the summer's going as opposed to fiscal year.
Right. I believe the numbers Evan gave me were for the current fiscal year that ended, well, for the fiscal year that ended July 1st.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll move on then to public comments. John, if you would watch for anyone that has a public comment, let us know.
Okay. Oh, got to turn the chat on just a sec. No hands at this point.
Okay. We'll give just a moment to make sure. Looks like we have none. we'll move on to item number 9 on our agenda, which is comments from the council, mayor and staff. Let's start. Any other comments from the council? Any comments from citizens that we need to be aware of that you've received? Councilmember Ekstrom?
I just wanted to, I guess, reassure those that are participating that we do want your input. That the whole purpose of that Open Meetings Act is so that you're listening, and that all of the good ideas don't have to come from this panel, right? I've heard so many good ideas from residents that have just happened to tune in and listen, that I really hope that we keep that in mind, that we want your input. You know, we want to hear from you. You're the ones out living in the community, and we have actually diverse experiences in North Ogden. You know, we've got, you know, different residential zonings, we've got county islands, we've got lots of different experiences happening. So when the public comes and they give us their feedback and their perspective, it really helps us govern better. So I really just am grateful that we have that Open Meetings Act, and we do love to have public comments. We'd love to have your input.
Thank you. Any comments, other comments from council? I would just add that I'm sure, like you've received many comments about garbage collection recently. You know, the same situation our city employees were facing is being faced by Republic, with the increased volume of garbage and truck and employee issues. And I know one of the comments that I received is that even though we don't have direct control over Republic, Councilman Severing, they are looking to our Public Works Department to be the contact and lead to help them get things resolved. And I know sometimes it's easy for us to say, well, that's Republic, and it basically is, but I think the citizens look to us to help where we can, and I understand that all instances we can't, but we are, for the public that's listening, we are aware of the issues with garbage collection. And I know Dave and his team and John are working with Republic to resolve those issues. But it's very, very interesting. And I think Ogden City's having some of the same problems. The volume is just so dramatically increased that it's hard for them to make all these additional runs out to the transfer station and then get back before it's closed to collect the rest of the garbage. So we are aware of that. Any other comments? Councilman Severing, do you have a comment?
I did. I actually had a citizen contact me this week. So this would be maybe, well, something that Tiffany and Parks and Recs need to look into. Apparently there's, and I've not been on this track, so I don't know, but there's a, on 1050, there is a track that walks along the side of the Canal Road. And apparently there's a bunch of lights that are solar lights that are not working at all anymore in the evening. So if maybe John could have whoever maybe take a look at that, that would be really awesome. And she mentioned specifically between 1050 and 900 East. So I'm passing that on to whom it may need to go to.
Yeah, we will pass that on. We typically see quite a bit of vandalism with those lights, and sometimes it's just a matter of waiting for the parts to come in, because the kids will go by with bikes and skateboards and kick them and beat them up, and they're all solar powered, because it's much cheaper to do that than to run a string of power underground in that area.
Okay, that makes good sense. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Councilman Swanson, I believe you were contacted about the historical video. Do you have any thoughts or comments on that?
Yeah, I reached out to send an email out to council. I've heard back from one or two of you regarding the old Campbell packing barn there on 2600 that's soon to come down. And there is an organization, the name escapes me right at the moment, excuse me, that wants to document with a video with some narration and some history and maybe interviewing some people. It would require, they have no money, and they're asking if we would be willing to come up with $1,000 to make that video happen. I think Councilman Barker, you replied that you were okay with that. I'm certainly okay with it. I think it's, I wish we had a way financially to save that barn and several others in the city. But just the way times are and with budgets are, we simply can't do that. But it would be nice to have this video documentation. Blake, I had sent you a text about reaching out to some of your handy dandy videography people. They seem to do an awfully good job, and see if they might be willing to participate and maybe reduce that cost or something. So Mayor, do you want to get kind of a head nod tonight for that $1,000?
Yeah, I think we ought to check with Robert Broler and Chad Roylance, see if they do. They're very good at maybe doing some of those things. I'd like to check there first. If not, I think it's good to preserve history of our city.
I'm actually, and I'm sorry, Phil, I should have responded back to you. I talked to Mary, what used to be Mary Campbell. So she's part of the Campbell family that owns the barn. So she's going to get back with me today, and I've already made arrangements with my video guy to do that.
Awesome.
So it's in the works.
Awesome.
Works. But the organization that you were referring to was the Weber County Heritage Foundation.
That's right. That's right.
And we also already have a bunch of pictures and some measurements of the building as well, that staff put together, to same thing, to try and make sure that we could replicate the building, or at least in the same mass. For one of the features in Barker Park was intended to be an old barn, and so the plan was to replicate it over there.
So it sounds like we have a solution there that may save the $1,000. So
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Blake, thanks for your crew.
Oh, you betcha.
all right, any other comments from council? Staff?
Yes, I have two items, Mayor. One is council, as you remember, you approved some code rewrites for the city code and the city land use code, which is a subsection of the city code. Those will be coming to you in the coming months. And I'm just warning you or letting you know ahead of time so you can treat it like Thanksgiving. I don't know if you're one of those that eats a lot to expand your stomach. So, or if you starve yourself, but either read a lot of books and get ready for it, or don't read anything to put your mind at rest, because it's going to be quite a bit of pages for you to look at. And we want to make sure that we give plenty of time for the council and the residents to review before they're approved by the council. And then the other question is, with us opening back up the offices, we are finding that Friday is more and more becoming less used. And so I just wanted to let you know that we're doing some studies on how many residents are coming in on Fridays, and looking at the option of possibly closing for a half day on Fridays. But we will bring that back to the council with kind of our recommendation and the numbers to support that. If just wanted to let you know that was coming as well, if you had any questions or direction for us as well.
I think, John, studying to make sure we're meeting the needs of the citizens is the information that we would least like to have before us.
Yeah.
as our job is to make sure that we're there when the citizens need us. So we'll look forward to your information.
Okay.
Anything else from staff? All right, we'd be looking for a motion to adjourn our meeting this evening with thanks for your service and spending a couple hours with us. Do we have a motion?
Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Okay, we have a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, anyone object? If not, have a good evening and thanks again.
Good night, thank you.